All right, back with another tier list. This time we are doing the number one receiver tier list. Every team's best wide receiver, ranking them into into tiers. The 5 tiers are you beat double teams, so guy who even if you put 2 guys on him is still going to consistently win. Then there's the you better at least have 2 guys on him. The usually beats one-on-ones, sometimes beats one-on-ones, and then finally, you're a number one question mark. Those are the 5 tiers. Let's just get into it, starting off with the Titans, with DeAndre Hopkins, who at his best was in the beat double teams tier, but I don't think he's quite at that point in his career, but still is a usually beats one-on-ones kind of guy. I felt like, especially down the field with with the Titans, does a really good job. There are instances where you could not double him if you want to, so I don't think it's fair to put him a tier above this, but in one-on-one spots is typically going to win. So yeah, there's that. Then we have Tyreek Hill, who is, in my opinion, in the beat double teams tier. Even if you put 2 guys on him, he's finding ways to make catches work. Certainly, you better double him, because if you don't, he's going to be gone for a 50-yard touchdown. But even if you don't, there's still, a lot of good stuff with Tyreek Hill. So yeah, I have him there. Then Garrett Wilson, who I am going to put in the usually beats one-on-ones tier as well. Another guy who, I do just wonder if he was in a better situation, do we feel higher about him? Maybe, and we'll see that hopefully this year. But even with what we've seen from him, is a guy who usually in his one-on-ones is winning. So then we have Jamar Chase, is the Bengals' best receiver, who I think is going to be in the, I'll put him in the you better double him tier. Not to say he can't get wins even if there's 2 guys on him, but you certainly have to at least put 2 guys on him or you're going to have a hard time. So because of that, that feels fair for me. And you have Amari Cooper, who I'm kind of going to put in the same spot. I think teams typically did double him last year. Occasionally you saw them not, and he blew up for a ton of yards. Real underrated player with the Cleveland Browns. So yeah, that feels reasonable for me. Moving on to the Jaguars, they're kind of in a weird situation where I don't know exactly who to even pick. I think they're hoping Brian Thomas Jr. can be their number one, or maybe Christian Kirk, who are both, Thomas Jr., a prospect I really like, Christian Kirk, just a player I really like, but at the same time, I don't know if either I love as a one-on-one. I'm putting in the you're number one question mark tier. It's not to say they're not good number 2s, and maybe Thomas could be a number 1, but either a rookie is number 1 or someone who I consider a good number 2 option as a number 1. Surprising either way. So yeah, obviously both of them do sometimes beat one-on-ones, so maybe that category is a bit poorly named, but that's where I have them. Now let's go to the Lions, who Amon-Ra St. Brown is their number 1 receiver, even though he typically plays out of the slot. He definitely usually beats one-on-ones, and I would even go as far as to say he should be in the you better double them tier. It's weird because it's kind of hard to double at a slot guy, but you can and probably should with him. Then Justin Jefferson is another, he beats double teams. He's fantastic. If there's 3 guys on him, he makes the catch. If there was the top 2 receivers in the league, it might be Tyreek Hill and Justin Jefferson, who are currently both in that top tier. Mike Evans for Tampa Bay is kind of the prototypical you better double him type of guy. The teams just don't leave him one-on-one hardly at all, because if you do, he's probably going to beat you. You can kind of take him away if you double him to some degree. Just ask the New Orleans Saints, but you're going to have to probably double him if you're going to have success. Then Brandon Ayuk, another guy who I think I'm going to put in that tier. I'm going to put in the you better double him tier, which part of what makes the 49ers so difficult is you can't, because of all the other stuff they have going on. You kind of have to leave him one-on-one, which leads to so much success. But Ayuk, really good player, really underrated player. I'm going to put him in that tier. We then have Drake London, who, I would put in the usually beats one-on-ones. Is it possible he could be in a higher tier once you get him in a better offense? Totally. But for now, I can only go off of what I've seen. He is someone still, though, that is usually beating a one-on-one. So, yeah, that's why I have him there. Next up is the Baltimore Ravens, who honestly, Mark Andrews is probably their number 1, but I don't think that's fair. I'm saying wide receivers. So I guess Zay Flowers is my pick. And I like Zay Flowers. I think Zay Flowers is a good player. But again, kind of in that Christian Kirk mold of Are you a great number one right now? I don't know. I'm going to still stick with, I'm going to put him into your number one question mark tier. Again, not to say he's a bad receiver, just that I don't think he's quite at that number one just yet. Maybe he'll get there. Who knows? For the Bears, they actually have a few guys. Romeo Dunze, Keenan Allen are guys I could choose, but I think I got to go with DJ Moore. I do think he is their best player, and I think he usually beats one-on-ones. Again, like these other guys, there are instances where it might make sense to not double him, but usually, they're going to win when you don't. So that's the way I view that. We didn't have CeeDee Lamb, who really emerged last year as a great wide receiver. It's still that 1 year. I don't think I'm going to quite put him into beat double teams tier, but you better double him because he's going to have success if you don't, 100%. And then we have the Texans with Nico Collins, another guy who I am going to put in the usually beats one-on-ones tier. That feels fair for me. He is someone who I think really showed up a lot of flash last year. And now I'm thinking about it, I'm saying him, but they just got Diggs. I kind of forgot about that. So, I think Diggs or Collins, Diggs isn't coming off his best year. I think either way, I'm putting them in the usually beats one-on-ones. Man, Texans might be really good next year. This is really good stuff. Moving on to the Colts. I almost said Nico Collins. Michael Pittman is probably their number one guy. Just paid him some big money. I like Michael Pittman. I think he's a good player. I think he's not quite on this tier of player, in my opinion. I am going to put him into sometimes beats one-on-ones, but he's also in the, I think he's a number one receiver for sure. It's just, I don't know if you're one of the great number one receivers, but beats one-on-ones often enough to be a number one receiver is really what that tier list should say, but that would be kind of long. So yeah, there's that. Cooper Kupp. I'm still going to, becoming a busy tier, might have to bump a couple people either up or down, but still going to put Cooper Kupp into you better double them tier. I just think that there's enough good. I know it hasn't gone as well as of late, but I still think that there's, it's fair to, bank on upside, essentially. We then have the Chargers, who, you got a rookie. Is it Quentin Johnston? Whoever. They don't have a number one. They just don't. This is you're a number one question mark. Then we have Devontae Adams, another guy who I think I'm going to put into you better double them tier list. I don't know. I still think he's pretty good. I really do. I don't know if he's quite what he once was, but even with that, I still think he's really good. I'm going to bet on him succeeding because there's still enough really good stuff there. So, yeah. Next up, we have Terry McLaurin, a guy who, at his best, feels like a you better double them guy. We haven't seen a ton of consistency. I'm sure Washington fans will say, well, look at who he's had to throw the ball to. Get him a better quarterback. You'll see a more consistent player. Maybe. That's possible. And he's still pretty good even with that. I think I'm going to put him into sometimes beat one-on-ones. I think that's going to be a controversial take. I think Washington fans would wish I put him higher, but for me, that's kind of where I feel about McLaurin as of right now. But I'm totally acknowledging I might be underrating him due to the situation. Then we have the Chiefs, another team that really it should be Travis Kelce, but we're sticking with just the wide receivers. Rashee Rice is their guy, even though they drafted Xavier Worthy in first overall. I'm going Xavier Rice, who I'm actually willing to put him above the your number one question mark tier. I think I am. I think he's shown me enough, but I still think he's just into sometimes beats one-on-ones. He beats one-on-ones and often enough. I'm willing to put him in this tier, but that's kind of where I have him right now. And then we have with the Saints, I think Chris Olave has to be their guy at this point, with Michael Thomas just not being the guy he used to be. Olave is good. I think he's actually still in the sometimes beats one-on-ones. To me, Olave's shown he's a number one receiver, but I don't know if he's if he's constantly winning in one-on-one, but beats him, wins pretty often in those. So then we have an interesting one here with Malik Neighbors of the Giants. They drafted him early on, and for some rookies, I put in the your number one question mark tier. But Neighbors is a better prospect than those guys that I mentioned. So because of that, I'm more interested in what he can do. What am I projecting year one? I don't know if he'll quite be I can't put him higher than sometimes beats one-on-ones. He's never played in the NFL. That's just as high as I can put him. So, yeah, that's where I'm putting him. I think that feels fair. Then you have A.J. Brown, who, again, someone who, for the Eagles, that you pretty much have to double or you're getting a 50-yard bomb on. Like, that feels like definitely belongs in that tier. The Steelers with George Pickens is, I don't know. Again, I think he's a number one. I still think he's a sometimes beats one-on-ones guy. I do want to see more consistency out of him. I do. There are games where he looks like an elite wide receiver. You better double him, or maybe even he beats double teams guy. He just doesn't show it consistently enough for me to have him too much higher. Next up is the Denver Broncos, who I was trying to think of who I even want to pick with them. I'm going to go Courtland Sutton, who I do like, but like, I don't think he's a number one. I think they need a number one. He's the you're a number one question mark tier for me. Then you have the Packers with Jaden Reed, another guy who I like. I like a lot, actually. I made a film study on why I think he's an underrated player and could really be good. I still don't think he's a number one wide receiver. I think the Packers are kind of constructed to have a bunch of number two wide receivers, and so I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing, but like I do think that he also belongs in this tier, in my opinion. And then you have the Carolina Panthers, who are this is a run of teams without great top end talent at the receiving core position. They added Deontay Johnson. I think he should be good. They added Xavier Legette. I think he should be good. But again, neither one of those guys I'm like, oh yeah, number one wide receiver. So yeah, you're there for me. We then have Marvin Harrison Jr., who, similar to Malik Neighbors, I haven't seen you play in the NFL yet. I can't put you too much higher, but as of right now, I do expect you to come in and win enough one-on-ones to be a number one wide receiver, which is still pretty high expectations for a player who has yet to play in the NFL. So, yeah, that's how I view that. Next up is the Buffalo Bills, who I really think they're hoping Keon Coleman is their number one guy. I'll put him as he'll be my pick for them, but like, I'm still going to put that in the you're a number one question mark. Like, it's a rookie. Like, that's just not a great situation. Seahawks, DK Metcalf, really good. I don't know if I can quite put him into you better double them tier, but yeah, he usually beats one-on-ones for sure. And then the Patriots here, Jalen Polk, yeah, he beats double teams, will be spectacular. No, I don't know why I'm making that joke, but he's not really a number one. I'm not really expecting him to come in and be a number one right away. It could change. Absolutely could change. And in fact, I'm sure some of these guys who I'm like, you're too young. What can I expect? Some of them will exceed my expectations. But I'm not going to get too optimistic about someone who hasn't played yet. So as a whole, this is my tier list. I was very stingy with the beat double teams tier. Only put two guys in there. I could have put a couple more, perhaps. Could have found room. But, decent amount into you better double them tier. A lot of teams do have, in my opinion, a number one wide receiver. But the teams that I would say don't are the Jaguars, although they have some options. The Ravens, although they do have a tight end who kind of fills that role. The Chargers, who could be in a rough spot. The Broncos, the Packers, who I actually think they're kind of the one that you look at and say that's almost by design to not have a number one. So I wouldn't. That's the one team that I'm like, the receiving score is still pretty good. There's just not a top guy. Panthers, which is made some improvements, still looks a little rough. Bills, who took a step back and definitely looks pretty rough. And then the Patriots, similar to the Panthers, made some improvements, but still looks a little rough. The receiving core in general, not just the top end guys. So yeah, those are my thoughts. What do you agree with? What do you disagree with? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.